Hey friend, welcome to the Halfway to Dead podcast. I'm your host, Jen Lovell. Listen, you and I have reached that age where we are done with the bullshit. We know that midlife is our chance to flip the script and experience life on our own terms. It's time to reconnect with our higher selves and reclaim our inner peace. Are you ready with an open heart and an open mind? Awesome, you're in the right place. Hop in and ride shotgun with me on this midlife spiritual journey. Hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you're all surviving this crazy time of year. If you have not started your meditation practice, I'm telling you right now, this is the time you're going to need it the most, so get on it. Okay, so today I have a good friend of mine here, Megan Campbell-Degedeh. Megan is a licensed clinical professional counselor. Megan specializes in leading group therapy sessions, and she also has her own private practice. Megan's a midlifer like us, you guys, so she gets it. She's super fun to hang out with, and she's also a single mom of 4 amazing kids that I personally love very much. They're very cool. And today we talk about starting traditional therapy and finding the right therapist. So you guys know we've talked a lot about we're going through the shadow work. We're in this journey. We're digging up the stuff and we can't get around it. We have to go through it. And oftentimes that means we need a therapist. We need some traditional therapy to help us figure this all out. So Megan and I go over all of the things we help you if you're getting ready to start therapy for the first time. We talk a lot about that. We talk about finding the right therapist that's the right fit for you. We talk about if you have a therapist and there's some red flags and maybe for whatever reason, you want to find somebody else. We talk about that too. We go over all of the common misconceptions and fears about therapy. So buckle in, you guys, because this is going to be a really good one for you, for everyone. I personally believe we could all use a little therapy in our lives. So let's jump in and see all of the things Megan has to share with us. She's a pretty smart cookie. Let's do this. Hey, Megan, thanks for being here.
Hey, you're welcome, Jen.
You guys are in for a treat today. Megan's a lot of fun. So we're talking therapy today. And so on this show, Megan, we talk a lot about the spiritual journey and the fact that we've got some shit we have to deal with. Mm-hmm. Because we don't get to this age and not have some shit. I mean, I've never met anyone. Have you?
Most people I know have a lot of shit.
Yes.
Yeah.
So especially by this age, whether it's traumas that we have to trace all the way back to childhood or shit we've just been through in the last how many ever years, whether it's divorce, losing someone, struggling with our kids. I don't know. There's a million reasons. Our jobs, there's a lot of shit and we're all in this together.
Life on its own is stressful. Absolutely.
No, it's a lot. Yeah. And so if you're out there thinking, do I need therapy? We're just going to real quick say you do. But I'm going to just throw some statistics at you guys in case you're still wondering if you should be in therapy. And these are specific to middle-aged women. I have down that 20% of women experience mental health conditions in any given year, specifically middle-aged women. Now, that sounds low to me. I think some people were lying when they were giving the old statistics, but that it's out there for sure. 23% of women in this age range report experiencing anxiety disorders. Okay, those feel like they're on the rise, especially since COVID. Here's a scary one. There's a 45% increase in suicide rates among women ages 45 to 64. I'm not loving that. No. And here's some of the reasons, you guys. We're the caregivers. Naturally, we're handling everything our whole lives. We work on work-life balance. We've got physical chronic conditions coming up at this age, which make all this worse. Not only are our hormones a piece of shit right now, but also we're just dealing with everything.
Right. And I also think add in there, and that's probably something that you are aware of, right? But a lot of times then too, our children are starting to live their lives and do their own thing. And then if we've kind of lost ourselves, it's...
What do we do?
Exactly. Like trying to figure out,
what are we doing now?
What are my hobbies? Who is my husband? How do I connect with other people? Yeah.
Yeah. We're in a place where we're trying to figure out what's next, right? Who are we? What should we be doing? And I think that's a big reason why we start stirring up some of the shit because we've stored so much in our bodies. We got to get it out of here to make ourselves physically and mentally more healthy, and so that we can be happy and finish this thing out.
Right. All kinds of life adjustments and stressors. We find that those propel people into therapy quite often. And a lot of times people say, like, I've been doing fine my whole life, right? Like I'm
fine.
been raising
We've been
kids.
saying I'm fine forever.
Absolutely. And then so why
we're
now,
not
or what's
fine.
going on? Why do I need therapy? Or is there something wrong with me?
Yeah.
Right?
And that leads me into what I really want to do is go through. I'm going to go through with Megan a lot of common misconceptions and fears that we have about therapy. I'm going to throw some of these at you, and you probably have heard these things when people come in or whatever. So first off, I think a lot of people think that therapy is only for crazy people, right?
Yeah.
If I go, I'm broken and I'm crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you don't even technically need a mental health diagnosis in order to, you
don't need one. You need
therapy, right?
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody recently who seemed surprised even that I was a therapist, and then asked me what kind of people came in to get
like
help.
what kind of people.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
like,
it was very much like some sort of category. And instead of even being able to describe anything with words, she started like gesturing, like, are they woohoo, woohoo, and started like waving her arms around and even did a half spin. And I just,
you're like, what are you doing? You need it. I just diagnosed you.
I was like, I think I got your number.
Yep,
no,
I
and that's
I might have someone for you.
Right.
No.
But I even told her, I said, I was at a party. I was standing in a garage with some other adults and people with kids. That's what I was doing. It was a kid's birthday party. And I kind of just looked around. I said, any person here could be somebody that could be and should be seeking therapy. And it did seem to just evade her.
Because we see therapy as another, honestly, misconception. It's a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
Like if you need help, there's something major wrong with you. You should be able to handle shit. Okay. You guys, we can't handle shit on our own. We just can't. We're figuring that out now because I spent my whole life thinking I could. And then you're like, oh, I can't. Here's another one. Let's do another one. Let's see. Well, this goes right along with it. Being judged or labeled. We don't want to be judged or labeled. Even getting a diagnosis can be painful because you're like, oh God, that's in writing. That's official. A doctor told me that. And that's scary.
Yeah. And especially if there's already the mindset, right, that those things mean that you're disordered, broken, damaged. So who wants to go out and seek that information then, right? But without it, right, it's a lot harder to get the help that we need.
Do you think that we need a diagnosis from like a psychiatrist, a doctor to seek therapy, or you don't need that, right?
Right. You don't need that on the front end. I mean, here's the deal is that insurance companies need typically a diagnosis in order to be billed.
Covered.
Right. To be covered. So I guess it depends on really how you're going about it. But at the end of the day, sometimes I do a lot of group therapy, right? There are times that people want their diagnoses or they want to know, like, why did it say bipolar disorder on my treatment plan? I've been told that I was major depressive disorder my last 3 years and how did it change? And they get very, I believe, sometimes hyper focused on the actual diagnosis. And a lot of times what I just try and clarify with people is that we're just trying to treat symptoms. But at the end of the day, are the things that are going on in your life, this extreme tearfulness, this extreme worry and nervousness that's impacting my sleep. If they're impacting my function, I don't really care what your diagnosis
call me whatever
is,
you
right?
want.
Then I'm going to try and help you with those things to help sort that out, right? And to come up with sleep hygiene plans or ways to better manage my nervousness and anxiety, because people usually are seeking therapy not based on, hey, what's my diagnosis? They're seeking therapy a lot of times because something's not going well in their lives, or they're struggling. Or maybe a family member or friend has said that they need, or that you need some help.
Because some people think therapy has to be long-term, like something I have to do the rest of my life, almost like medication. You get put on medication, you're like, oh God, I might have to take this forever.
Yeah.
Which isn't the case either. You don't necessarily need medication forever or therapy forever, right?
Very true. I mean, therapy really is designed to help give skills and ideas and strategies and help and support, insight, right? All of those things in order to be able to take those tools. I mean, once you learn a skill and practice it, then you're able to, my goal would be to send you back out into the world and that you don't need therapy again. I also think that sounds probably overstated because come back in for a booster shot anytime that you need, right?
Well, yeah, you can still go back in whenever you need it.
Yeah, but I mean, therapy isn't really looked upon anymore as something that has to be years and years. I mean, it could be months to a year, something like that. But it is collaborative too, right? And you have rights, you have choices. You could just stop attending if you wanted to, right?
Right. But okay, so this is something I've heard from people. They think that if they start talking about the problems will make them worse, or opening up will be too painful, or therapy will force me to relive my traumas. What do you think?
I think it's fair to say that, yes, therapy might open up things that will feel uncomfortable and distressful. And you may be asked to talk about things that open up those old wounds. But we also try and what we would call informed consent, right? Talk to clients about that ahead of time, that, it may seem like at times, wow, this is more painful than what I expected, or this feels hard, but that is part of treatment, but it shouldn't be unendurable. You're there with a supportive person, and typically you're getting into therapy because you want to improve those things. And so therefore, even like trusting that this person isn't trying to, right, that there's a means to the end, right? That the ultimate goal, the silver lining, if you will, is that I will be able to relinquish and get through some of this. Because what I also find is that people are living in that pain on some level already on the day-to-day.
They just don't know that's what's causing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so it's like, wow, you're already doing this and like swimming upriver while doing it. Let's look at that, but you don't have to be there forever.
And you're not pulling this out of people in session one.
Exactly.
You're going to probably slowly talk it through, get some tools on board for when you sense that's going to really come out.
Absolutely.
You guys, you're not going to walk in, sit down, they say, and you, hi, nice to meet you. Tell me about the day you got raped.
Right.
All right. No, this isn't what happens, you guys.
Right. Tell me about, your traumas and everything that.
No, you're going to, that's why you go to professional. They're trained to guide you into it when you're ready, not like a friend who might just be a little too blunt with you.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it is going to dig things up, but it's necessary to come to the other side. Let's talk about finding the right therapist. This feels like a good spot for finding the right therapist. With a therapist, how do we know? How many sessions would you say it takes to know? Sometimes I bet first session, you're like, this isn't a fit.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. And it's funny because, well, it's not. I mean, I'm on both sides, actually. I've been on both sides.
You've been on both. That's why I want you to tell us.
I want your side about some therapists that I've had. And I feel like almost all of my therapeutic relationships, or I should say my therapist, right? I'm still kind of talking like a therapist.
Yeah, well, you are one.
I know. It's okay. So weird sometimes. But have been really positive. I remember in my early 20s, I remember what I was kind of working on, some early self-esteem issues. That stuff carries on, friends.
Well, yeah,
it does. We're always like getting hit with new things.
This is what I'm saying about choosing the right therapist. It could just be we're not comfortable with that person, because I've had one, like I said, and all she did was stare at me. She had these big eyes.
Yeah, and then that's not a good fit for you.
It felt judgy to me.
I bet it did.
And I'm not going to open up to someone I think's judging me.
Right.
We just aren't.
And here's another, kind of double-edged sword, is that a lot of times it's viewed that person is in a position of authority. You already mentioned all the letters after their name.
Yep.
So clearly, if she's just staring at me, she's still an expert. And therefore, I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like opening up, but she probably knows her stuff. But I don't think I can go back. I also think that, and here's another thing, right? Depending on what we're working on, it's scary to maybe say to that person, what's going on? Because I'm not really sure. I just feel you looking at me. And in my head, it feels like you're judging me.
But most people aren't going to say that.
They won't, but that would be rich. That would be rich therapy stuff for me right there. Like I would love it if I got that on a silver platter.
I could say that now, which I think going to therapy in midlife, maybe we are more apt to, because we're saying what we think more. We're not worried about judgment as much.
I agree.
I would say that to someone now. I'd be like, I'm a little freaked out. You're not saying anything. I'm going to need a little more.
Girl,
could we have some communication?
The confidence that I have now compared to what I had in my my 20s.
Yeah.
It's
I wouldn't
like,
have said any of that then.
absolutely.
No.
I'm a different woman than I was, right?
No.
So and that's why I think of all of these nuances and dynamics that we're bringing in when we're talking about, right? Like, how do you know if it's the right therapist or not?
Yep.
And where are you even really willing to go with it? I think that you hit it though, that if you feel uncomfortable, if you feel like you can't open up, and you may not feel comfortable asking those questions that we were just talking about, then find a different therapist. Absolutely. And it's,
because from your point of view, if we were to say, this doesn't feel like the right fit.
Honestly.
Yes. What are you feeling if I said that to you right now?
Yay.
I said yeah.
Good for you. Great advocacy. Yeah. My goodness. I love that you know that now. I am not going to try and convince you. I think that's a beautiful thing. And that should be something, and we learn about that in school. We should be able, I hope, have, the basic emotional health to be able to not take that as something that's personal or something. Mm-hmm. It is personal in a way, but relationships are personal. We're asking somebody to come into therapy and maybe bear their shit. And so if I'm not feeling comfortable, then how much am I really going to get out of that?
Because
therapy?
you're not wanting clients that are uncomfortable with you either. You aren't going to feel satisfied in your job. You're not going to make progress.
100%.
So what I'm saying out there, guys, is we don't have to be nervous about letting go of our therapist to look for another one. You may have to cycle through, honestly, a few to find the perfect fit, which is why I think sometimes people quit, because they're like on their second or third person. You're like, okay, I guess it's me. Like, I guess no one understands me. I'm not going to find anybody to help me.
Right. I say, keep looking.
Keep looking.
I
have a family member that I think we went through probably 4 therapists, and they were a teenager at the time before we found the one that connected the way that person needed to connect.
Mm-hmm.
And then we made progress. Mm-hmm. But before that, it almost does more damage than good if you stick with someone that is not doing well for you or your loved one, whoever it is.
I think it can be. Yeah. If you overthink it or you don't love going, you get nervous to go, right? And it's a waste. Maybe it's not a waste of time. I hate to look at anything as though it's cut and dry and just, but it's experience and you learn and it's like, hey, this isn't working and get out. But I can't say enough that if it doesn't feel like it's a fit after, yes, if you know the first session, but 2 to 3 sessions in, fine. And I like to say to clients too, when I start them, that if you feel at any time, if you feel even after this first session, I'm not assuming that we're already going to book another session.
No, yeah.
You let me know. We can even end this session with, hey, a lot of therapists have a text or a mobile number now that they use for texting to make appointments. And that's completely professional and legit, or book another appointment if you want, call me, leave a message, whatever it is. But, it doesn't have to be built in already that suddenly we're bound together.
So basically, knowing if a therapist is a good fit or not for you boils down to just trusting our gut and our intuition on it, how it feels.
You're right. It goes back to our gut and our intuition. And if we feel natural and comfortable being able to open up, because without that, we're not going to be able to get very far. And I think you mentioned something earlier too, if I can just go back to that about how does that make you feel, or not really hearing much from your therapist. I still remember, and I talk about it like back when I got my bachelor's in psych, tabula rasa, which translates from Latin to blank slate. Yeah. So learning that the therapist is really a blank slate. The therapist is really just meant to reflect everything back, not to really show emotion, opinion, judgment. And yeah, there's a part of that, but I do think that we've gotten, and we should have gotten away from that. We want usually a real person.
Things are progressing.
They are. We want a connection. We want a humanness. We want, right? And it's a balance. For me, sometimes it's hard to put into words, right? I want a humanness. I want a connection. I want to feel comfortable and like I can be vulnerable. And at the same time, I also am not going to really hear from that person's personal experiences in a way that makes me feel connected in that way. It's a different type of connection. It's almost like there's something kind of parental about it. If you think about healthy parenting, it's unconditional, maybe positive regard, maybe not unconditional love. It's unconditional positive regard is actually a term from humanistic psychology, but unconditional positive regard, and just knowing that that person gets you, supports you, has your back. And you don't really get that from a blank slate, right? But also not getting anything more, where you want to be able to see that they're human, but not know the nitty gritty of how they're human. And in my experience, the amounts of self-disclosure that I use, or when I am disclosive with clients, whether it's in a group room or in individual therapy, they usually like it, and they say it right out loud.
It makes you more human to them.
Absolutely.
Like, okay, good. She gets it.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that therapists need to
I didn't think you did.
Their personal stories with me necessarily. But I'm saying, like, if I'm talking and I'm getting blank, and I know that the point of therapy is for us to come to conclusions and decisions on our own, to be guided there. I don't expect you to tell me exactly what to do, but I think a lot of us go to therapy hoping you will help me tell me what to do.
For sure.
But I need, for me, I don't know. I think a lot of people, I at least need to know what you're thinking, or I'm making up what you're thinking.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to hear you say, like, that sucks. And just so you know, that wasn't normal. Just let me know that the shit I'm saying that happened to me wasn't normal, right? Like, it's almost like I like a little more validation during it. Yeah. Even if they're not sharing their personal story, them just giving me that look like, that's fucked up, is validation sometimes for me.
Yeah. And I totally, when you were speaking about it, I did understand too that you're not looking for like an emotional dump from your therapist onto you, but what you're saying is
a conversation.
A conversation, and even think of what I hear you saying right now is some of the values and things that you want from a therapist, right? Right. So if someone maybe isn't strong in compassion or giving validation, then that might be a miss for you. And just like you said, there's all different types of personalities or things that a therapist, qualities that a therapist has, that sometimes we only are going to understand what we need or want maybe after a relationship or two that hasn't gone well. Yeah. So what I hear some of the values that you would want in a therapist. Somebody
Look at you validating me right now. Yeah. I'm in therapy right now, you guys. No.
Aren't you feeling
She's like, what I hear you saying. And I'm like, oh shit. Yep. She's a therapist.
Yeah. But
I love it.
A lot of times people want someone very direct, right? And
so it's the right fit.
Absolutely.
It's the right fit.
And I guess I hope
if someone's too direct, you're going to scare people off.
Right.
For me, I like direct. Yes. But for some people, it'd be like, whoa, that was too much from her. I can't do that again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so it's the right fit, you guys. So let's just do this really quick. So let's just clarify the
psychiatrist.
So there's a psychiatrist.
Prescribe medications.
They're a doctor.
Doctor.
Okay. So
MD.
if you're going to a psychiatrist, they are an MD, DO, something. They're
MD or DO. Yep.
They're going to prescribe you your medication.
Yep.
They went to school a buku amount of years. They're medical.
They're medical. And yeah, they are highly trained, and they can hospitalize. They can.
So
they're doctors.
And then there's a psychologist.
Okay.
What's a psychologist?
A psychologist is usually a doctor of psychology.
Okay. It's like PhD.
PhD or a PsyD. I think a PsyD goes more clinical, and a PhD is a little bit more research based. So a psychologist in general, I think typically they might be research oriented. They might be teaching. They also typically can perform assessments like personality assessments or neurocognitive type of assessments.
Okay. But they're doing a lot of research too.
They are.
Yeah.
Typically. And then there's some psychologists that do just work with clients clinically. So I would say it is such a broad range, but typically those they're doctors.
Okay. So then when we hear social worker, what's a social worker?
A social worker, a lot of times, so social workers, they do therapy, right? Licensed clinic. Well, in our state, it's LCSW, right? Licensed clinical social worker. But a social worker in general is not only possibly able to help some with therapy and mental health, but their main specialty, first and foremost, is usually helping direct people to all types of services, right? So being able to understand someone's problems from multiple angles, and then maybe help them navigate different resources.
They don't typically
and systems.
do one-on-one therapy, though, do they?
Some do.
Some do.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
okay.
And I feel like, they're very capable of doing therapy. It's just usually a little bit different, whereas a counselor is more
So is counselor and therapist interchangeable?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. So counselor and therapist pretty much means the same thing.
It does. Mm-hmm.
Do you have to say you're a therapist, do you have to have certain credentials versus counselor? Because I know like in some churches you can see a counselor, but they don't have the same certifications as like some of the therapists in practice.
Yeah, I feel like the words are kind of
misleading
funky.
sometimes.
They can be, and I even feel that way. And I'm a licensed therapist, right? So I also feel like if I say LCPC, right, that a lot of people might say like, what is that? But we're like, in order to be able to take clients to do individual therapy, we have to be licensed, right?
Yes.
So there might be a counselor that works in an agency, or you're right, in a church or things like that, that might very well be equipped to help people with things, but they may not be able to do individual therapy where you're billing an insurance company, et cetera.
And doing specific things like the cognitive behavioral therapies and stuff like that.
Correct.
They might not be doing some of that.
Right.
And then there's also just, and this is more and more popping up everywhere, life coaches.
Yeah.
Which take on the role of a therapist sometimes a little bit, these life coaches.
Yeah, I think it's more of a certification training. I'm not really familiar with that personally.
I feel like they're more to help you make decisions in your life, in your career, in your, you know what I mean? Like help you guide you along on decisions and your life path.
Yeah, I do feel like it's very guidance based and maybe not digging into, you mentioned trauma a lot earlier, things like that, to dig into from a
It's probably not a life
health,
coach we're looking for.
Mental health perspective. I would say probably you would be looking more for a social worker or a counselor or a psychologist. Yeah.
Yes, versus life coach.
And life coaches, listen, there's many that are probably fantastic and have a ton of experience.
It's if you feel like you're with the right person for what you need, then that's what you go with. When we're deciding who we need to see, it's nice to know the difference between because sometimes you go to a psychiatrist and you're like, why aren't they talking to me more? Well,
right. That's another misconception that I hear from people.
Yes.
Like even because again,
why aren't they why aren't they really digging into what's wrong with me? Well,
she didn't even want to talk about my problems today.
And it's like, well, no, she was just here to diagnose and start a treatment plan. Right.
And maybe prescribe medications based on some of the symptoms and things like that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then get you to a therapist who will talk for an hour, because the appointments aren't even really made for them to sit and talk about your problems for an hour.
No, you're right. I mean, absolutely.
I just don't want people going with false expectations when they go to the psychiatrist versus the therapist. And also, I can't go to a therapist and get a prescription.
Correct.
Okay. So it's a team effort, some of these things.
Yeah. So even clinical psychologists or counselors or social workers, none of those people can prescribe anything medication. To you. Nurse practitioners.
Yep. A nurse practitioner, a PA.
Yep. And a PA.
Which more and more offices are having nurse practitioners and PAs. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And they do great too.
They do great. Yeah. And some of them, you can also find a nurse practitioner who specializes in psychiatry. So that can be really a helpful niche as well if you are, just looking for that for specific mental health concerns. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Listen, the bottom line I wanted everyone, all my pod friends out there to figure out is to get rid of some of the stigma. I want you guys to know that it's totally normal when you're struggling, especially as we're heading down this journey in midlife. We're trying to figure out what's next. We're bringing up some traumas. We're doing, we've talked about shadow work, inner child, all of these things. When we get into that, we may need to head to a professional, and that is the stigma's gone. You guys in this day and age, no, just go get your help. There's help out there. And we talk about practices we can do on our own. Yes. But this episode was for you guys to know that if you're feeling a pull, like you need more help, you need professional help, it's out there. And I just wanted to help you guys with some of these steps because it's confusing. Megan, it's confusing. Am I right?
It is confusing.
I mean, not to you because you're in the profession maybe. So it's real clear to you. But for some of us out there, this is very scary to start this process.
It is. And I think hopefully we covered some of the main pieces that just on the front end of so many people, not even knowing how to begin to look for a therapist. Like, what do I do? Do I call around first? Do I look at my insurance
We don't need to worry So let's just walk through it real quick.
Okay.
Let's walk through it.
Like the process of getting a therapist.
Yeah. So I've decided, so I'm doing the work. I'm in my spiritual journey and I've decided I've got some work to do and some things have come up and I need someone outside of my family because they're too close to me. They're too close to me. I don't trust what they're saying, their motives, everything else. I need someone from the outside. So I need a therapist. One of the first things I'm thinking I have to do is see if my insurance covers it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a great first step.
Because I need to see if it's getting paid for.
Yeah, because therapy can be expensive.
It can be expensive.
And most insurances do cover therapy. However, you might have carve outs in your plan where there's different types of deductibles and copays. So I would say absolutely talk to your
check out your insurance plan first. If you don't have insurance. Okay, so let's talk about people who don't have insurance. Okay, I don't want people to think there's nothing they can do. There are resources out there, right? Like what would some resources? So sometimes there's a program through your employer.
EAP, Employee Assistance Programs, right?
So check into that.
So absolutely talk to your HR department and see what resources are available that your employer offers, right?
So if you're taking college classes, a lot of the college campuses have
so
I
many.
have a relative. Her parents would never let her do therapy. They would only let her do therapy if it was with the pastor at church. Okay. She was uncomfortable. She didn't really want to talk to the pastor at church. And she actually started into therapy by the free resources at her college at the time.
Yeah.
And then they got her working on things.
Sure.
So that's something else. There are resources out there. There are organizations.
Yes. So counseling centers on campuses, I know our local university here, right? They offer that. And so just another piece of that is if you're getting services there and then do need perhaps like a higher level of care or more services, then those agencies also are equipped to help find other resources as well, right? Actual individual therapists or group therapists. A lot of times there's support groups, right? There's a group that's national called Celebrate Recovery. It's for substance abuse and for mental health, for whatever somebody might be dealing with. They are typically faith-based, Christian-based, and you can find Celebrate Recovery in many churches across the country, I believe.
A lot like how AA is available. Al-Anon, AA, there are groups.
But think of all of the online groups too, Jenny. Like there's AA, Dharma Recovery.
But what if we don't need that?
Okay, yeah.
We just have some shit. We have some childhood trauma. We had a terrible divorce we went through, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that doesn't feel like the right fit. And maybe we live remote. I have a lot of listeners that live remote. They don't even have access to a lot of therapists, psychiatrists, anything. So that leads us into there are online options
that can be free.
Yes, free or paid. So there are programs if your insurance doesn't cover it at all. Okay, so I'll just throw out one. I'm going to put some in the show notes that Megan recommends and that I have had people that have used them and I know they're legit. But let's just say something like BetterHelp or whatever. Okay, so you're going to pay a fee, but you'll know what it is monthly, right? And you get your weekly sessions or whatever. And what I like about some of the online ones, if you are remote or maybe you've tried the therapists in your area and they weren't the right fit. So you feel like you're still looking and you're very uncomfortable. Like I said, just say to your therapist, this isn't the right fit. I know that most of you out there can't do that. I get it. And so what I like about some of those is you can match up, and we'll talk about some different things of how you match up who would be best for you, but you can match up with someone. You can do it from your own home. You don't have to leave your own home. You can have your session. And at the end, if they didn't feel like the right fit, it's very easy to switch. It's a click of some buttons. Listen, I know it's best for us to give them a minute, but listen, if they're not the right fit, click, you make a session, you paid your monthly fee, you click, and you try someone new.
Right. We can think of all of the clicking like that, whether you're face to face or not, right? Because it's about you
connecting with the person.
It doesn't have to be personal. So, because this is a professional relationship at the end of the day, as much as it gets personal. See how muddy it gets when we really talk about it.
A little bit muddy, but it's just your intuition. We're just talking about when you're trying to find the right person.
100. Online therapy.
Yeah.
I think if you're unfunded, if you don't have any funds, if you don't have insurance or your insurance doesn't pay all of that, right?
Your deductible so large, you're not there yet.
Right. Therapists accept self-pay. I don't know if most do. I don't know if everyone knows that, right? And a lot of times we have sliding scales that
I've heard about this.
Yeah, so I do sliding scales just based on what someone's. I don't really, I don't need a personal financial report from anybody to understand if they are economically not in a spot to pay for therapy. So I currently have 3 individual clients right now that pay modified rates because I don't accept their type of insurance, right? So you might also want to find a type of a therapist that doesn't accept your insurance.
Yeah.
And you could find out what their self-pay rate is. And those can range from, listen, I don't know, 25 to 150. I mean, maybe there are some people that, or even higher. I'm just kind of giving a range, but there are ways that I believe therapy can be affordable. And maybe maybe it would be best that you got therapy every week, but for the time being, every other week, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I can afford. Hey, can I carve out $50 a month, right? And this therapist said they would accept 25 a session. And I think that those are available. Those might be available rates out there. You might have to shop around a little bit.
And that's in person and these online. I don't know that online's really have a sliding scale. They have a set fee, so you know what you're in for.
For these online groups that you're talking about?
Yeah. And some of the online take your insurance too. It just depends. So we'll just we don't need to deep dive into all that. Just know that there are resources out there. We'll put some stuff in the links. You can research it. So if you're unfunded, you have no money, there's still options. If you have insurance, but the people covered in your area aren't a fit, that doesn't mean you don't have the option to still find someone that works for you.
And remember too that a lot of community mental health agencies do offer, if you have state insurance, Medicaid insurance, things like that, they do offer therapy and will bill those agencies. And I would also say if you have zero insurance, then either be applying for that type of aid or call your community mental health center to see if they're able to offer anything or provide you with any resources in your community that might be able to help.
Because I know in your minds, the first thing is, how am I going to fit this in the budget? Okay. So there are ways. And then second, okay, but who do I pick? Because you can go to you have insurance and you're looking through who's covered.
Okay. So you found a big group that's covered.
We're saying who do I pick? So in my mind, I'm thinking male, female. One of the first things I'm thinking is, who am I going to be comfortable with? Right. A male or a female? And then we start looking, I know what we all do. We start looking at reviews and stuff, but I want you guys to be aware, because sometimes with reviews, it's people are more prompted, in my opinion, to bitch when something went poorly than to give praise when it went really well. So I don't always go by the reviews. I think the reviews are good. They're good information, especially not just the stars, but when people are like typing out what they kind of went to them for and what they're helping them with. Great.
Yeah. Man, I'll tell you what, I'd think about it like getting a good pair of denim, right? Getting a good pair of jeans, right? I'm going to look at the sizing details put out by the company. I'm going to see what they're telling me about the product. I'm going to read a couple of reviews. Then I might even filter through and see like, hey, who's my size? Who's my weight, right?
Right.
And now I'm going to like really filter that down. And that might be something that, right, maybe I have time for. If you could technically treat, right, finding the right therapist, something like that. So you can start to see, right, what your personal things that you're after and see if that matches up.
Well, that's the thing too. And we go into it, what's our goal, right? Like, what's my goal? What am I working on? What's my goal? What things do I feel drawn to? Yeah. So, because sometimes you look someone up and there's a list of things they treat, but then they're like, what, do I want to say specialize or something that they like to focus on or they see more of? So there are categories too.
Expertise and specialties, 100%. Listen, I oftentimes go to Psychology Today. Okay. Which is online, very easy tool to use, right? And I love the filters, right? So I'm able to, right? Let's say I work with people who are looking for therapists on a really regular basis. Yeah. And Jenny, like you said, the first question a lot of times, male or female. That just helps me whittle it down right
female.
There. Absolutely. So that then.
Can you type in what you're dealing with?
Absolutely. Okay. So there's filters for divorce, grief, parenting, you name it. And then there's the specialties, right? Like, hey, I've heard cognitive behavioral therapy talked a lot about in my group therapy. And it's a type of therapy that really hits for me, right?
I work for my friend. I want to try it.
Then you can even put all of those filters in with your zip code, and you might still have 10 people. And then there's a bio for each person. Not everybody is on psychology today, but there are so many people on it that I do believe that within a 15-mile radius, most people can find a handful of people that they could look into. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you call and do a little convo?
Yeah.
With people? Like, can you call?
Yeah.
And then what kind of stuff would we want to ask? Like, if it was like hey, let's do an introductory call, see if we're the right fit. I don't know. Yeah. What would you, or even at a first session, what's some stuff that you might get hit with? Like, what do you think? Yeah. I mean, because listen, if I'm wanting to talk about LGBTQ stuff, I don't want some judgmental Christian woman sitting across from me that thinks they're all going to hell. I don't know. Should we be open enough to say, could you tell me how you feel about this?
Yeah, you could do that, because I think
and that's me being like pretty bold in midlife.
Yeah. And I think before, honestly,
that might be something they list on their profile anyway.
I really would whittle that out first. And also ask friends, how many.
Word of mouth. Like ask a friend, like, do you know anyone?
Right. Or who have you used? Yeah. Or, can you ask around? So networking that way.
I'm going to guess a lot of my listeners, because we're on this midlife spiritual journey, it may not want a specific structured religious person. Right? We want more open-minded people that are open. You know what I mean? We don't want to bring our woo-woo to someone who's looking at us like we're not so.
And just therapists in general, right? To kind of, restate that if I would say, if you're feeling any kind of judgment or bias, oh my gosh, go. That's not a good fit for you.
No, that's not a good fit.
And I don't love the thought of any therapist bringing that into the therapeutic relationship, right?
No, we don't want any of that. Nope. And there are different types of therapy, like we said, that people specialize in. You've talked about cognitive behavioral therapy. That's CBT. A big one. We've all kind of heard of that. But there's all kinds of other ones too, you guys. And so it's specialized. Maybe you're someone who wants to try this hypnosis thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that's a special. Not all therapists are rolling with the hypnosis right now. Or maybe you want someone that is more open to spiritual journey stuff.
Absolutely.
You want
someone who understands Reiki,
like you want someone who's open to energy work, someone who's open to meditation, someone who's open to gratitude journaling, like these kinds of things. You don't just want to be told. A lot of us just don't want to be told we need just take these 2 pills.
Right.
And then, you know what I mean? We want someone who's a little more open-minded, I think.
And I think that's why we try and draw from an eclectic perspective, right, to treat each client, because everybody is so different and it is so personal. So absolutely, I come at things personally from a cognitive behavioral therapy perspective first and foremost. However, it doesn't mean that we're not pulling from other therapies to help each particular person with
my gosh, because I have a list and it's like big. There's a lot of kinds. Some of these I have never even heard of. But listen, they're out there, and I feel like there's new stuff all the time coming out. Do you feel like, because there's, IPT, EMDR, ACT, MBCT. There's all these damn letters and we don't know what they mean. So sometimes we don't know which one we need.
So
we don't know what we need.
Yeah, you just mentioned ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. EMDR is definitely, that's a specialty. Someone would need to have specialized training in that. And that is something that you would most likely find on a profile, right? And
DBT.
Dialectical behavioral therapy. Absolutely.
There's a lot out there, you guys.
And sometimes maybe you're seeing a psychiatrist and they are helping steer you in the direction of therapy. And if they understand your diagnosis or your issues, they might also be giving you a heads up. Hey, I was told to try and find a therapist who specializes in DBT or CBT or IFS.
So that's something then you're going to type in.
Absolutely. And you can have a conversation. Like, I know you asked what types of, you're allowed to interview your therapist too, but sometimes that might be your first session, right? Which is a first full session. But a lot of times you might see in a blurb, or if you're online doing a search, that you can very easily email a therapist that you want to connect. And then you can have a 10-minute phone conversation to see if things click. And the whole purpose of that 10-minute phone conversation.
What are we saying in it?
Depends on what you're looking for, I guess.
Okay, so I'm calling. So I'm calling and I'm saying, hey, I'm sure they're not going to sit and say nothing on the phone. They're going to say,
sure.
What are you looking for? What do you got going on?
Absolutely. So
they're going to ask you what they have
therapy.
going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing is people don't always feel like an expert in their own lives or with what's going on, right? So they might be wanting to cater their language to try and help a therapist understand what's going on, when really it's like, hey, I'm struggling, and then what's been going on? What are you struggling with?
And bottom line,
it's a conversation.
We just want to be honest with our therapist, right? Just say, I had a really shitty divorce. This, and this happened. I am struggling with whatever you're struggling with. Right? I have some childhood trauma that's creeped back up again. This, I think this happened to me, or that happened to me.
Right.
Or I'm struggling with my adult child. Yeah. Or whatever. So just
a lot
be
of times
honest.
You're right. It's not always, sometimes, we might be talking about generalized symptoms, but there are times too where it's, I can't get out of bed anymore.
Yeah, I'm having trouble even taking a shower anymore.
Yeah, I haven't changed my sheets in 4 weeks, and that is not like me.
Okay, wait a minute.
I'm having panic
attacks.
Stop right
there. How often are people changing their sheets?
Probably not as frequently as what
because I
everybody
feel
says.
like I don't do it frequently, and I'm just going to say, guys, if you're not changing your sheets a lot, I'm right there with you, and I don't think I need therapy for it.
Yeah, you know what's going on in your life, but I guess I'm telling you,
things are getting behind.
If
like
it's that
you're
alone,
I used
don't
to
feel
shower.
bad.
Yeah. If you're just not changing your sheets, you guys, we're not trying to call you out because
zero judgment.
I have no idea how often people do some of the things they do.
Yeah.
Like I talked to one person, they're like, I wash my sheets every few days.
No.
And I'm like, wait, what? Okay. And then I have people are like, I don't remember the last time I washed my sheets. I don't judge people either way. I don't care.
Same.
Listen, I don't care about that stuff, but some people are very critical about it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's an OCD thing. Maybe there's some diagnoses for different things with that. But anyway, don't worry about it, guys.
Yeah,
if you're out there, don't worry about your sheets so much.
I think I'm thinking about the things that people typically say. Usually it's a multitude of things, right? But if it's just the sheets, then I might tell you, hey, how's that affecting you, right? How much is it bothering you? And is it getting in the way of anything? And maybe I'd just say, hey, our session is over. You are good to go. My guess is that would be the tip of the iceberg if you're calling for therapy, right?
You're not calling because you didn't change your sheets often enough this month.
Yeah.
No, you're a little bit
things.
deeper. Oh God. So we're on the phone. Yeah.
Say whatever. Say what's going on. And a therapist, right, is going to lead you to try and help understand, right, what's going on, to see if they can help you, if we should schedule a session.
So as I'm talking about being honest with your therapist, here's what popped to my mind. So are you allowed to tell anybody else? Sometimes we're guarded because we don't know if we believe you or not, that you're not going to tell people. Okay. So in general, there is a patient therapist confidentiality, right?
Oh, yeah.
So tell me but there are probably some situations you're required to say. Like if I come in and say, I have killed 5 people. I think I might be a serial killer. I mean, are you keeping that to yourself? Like what? I'm
Actually, that one's a little bit nuanced.
I'm guessing it is.
Okay,
but
so let me tell you. Yes, it is confidential. We are not talking about you or your situation outside of our therapy relationship.
No, not even with you're not home talking to your partner about it. You're not home talking about your kids.
No.
Like that's not a thing.
So the major thing, right, is if you tell me you're going to hurt yourself, you tell me you are going to hurt someone else, or you tell me about a minor or someone under the age of 18 who is being harmed or hurt by somebody else, and those are
required to be reported.
Areas where I am a mandated reporter, and I would have to make phone calls and either keep you safe or somebody else safe that you're planning to hurt, right? So in those cases, I would break confidentiality.
You would need to break
100%.
Yes.
Yeah. However,
and that's probably the intervention they need then.
Oh yeah, that would be a start because we're trying we're going to keep somebody safe. We're going to
if you're going to harm yourself, you need immediate intervention.
100.
If you're going to harm someone else, that needs immediate intervention because you don't want to harm someone else either. Okay, guys. Or if you know of a child, like you said, mandated reporting, we're not going to let the kids get hurt. Okay.
So those are the times that we would have to break confidentiality.
Right.
Otherwise,
but if I came into you and said, this is my 5th affair. I've been cheating on my husband 5 times. No, you're not reporting that to anybody.
No.
Or if you come in with whatever, you've got an addiction, you've got whatever. These are all things that stay between there, 2 people. All right.
Correct. You could be breaking the law, and
you could be,
I am not
you could
going
be
to share
a
that
kleptomaniac
information.
who
Absolutely.
is stealing from the local Target.
Yes. And I'm going to
You're not calling Target.
Nope. No.
Or the police. Okay. I just want to make it clear to everybody. There is definitely, they really aren't. Because sometimes people don't want to, I don't want to go to a therapist in my area. What if she tells someone? No, you would lose your license. You'd be done.
Absolutely. Right. I've never heard of any major issues, thankfully, with that. And when there are, people get sued and lose their licenses. So yeah.
So that's not a thing, you guys. We can
not.
feel confident
not keep
in
that on the
sharing
radar.
your feelings. If you were abused as a child, they're not going to go call the police. No, you're working through some things, and that's the point of a therapist. They're not there as police officers.
Right. Not there to be punishing or punitive or do anything to out anything. So there's really,
if there's going to be harm to yourself or another human being.
Very specific reasons that we would have to do that.
This confidentiality thing is real.
It's very real.
Yeah.
It's very real.
Yeah. Okay. Because sometimes we see on shows where, all of a sudden they're coming and they're, giving subpoenas for records. And so we get a little scared, which that will happen.
That can happen.
Really bad's gone down.
Yes. Yeah. Things can happen with subpoenas and things like that. But again,
but this isn't a thing. It's not for us to worry about.
Yeah. It shouldn't. I hope those things don't keep people needing some help or listeners, right? Middle-aged. Hey, get on your spiritual journey and get some therapy if you need it. And
get some therapy because we got to do this. We got to do this. All right. So we found our therapist. All right. How do we know how often we need to come? Do we just talk to our therapist during session 1? And this is just not worrying about our insurance right now. I don't want to talk about what the insurance company thinks. But how do we decide?
If we're initially seeking therapy, I would say typically, not that everybody fits some mold, but it's going to be once a week.
Once a week.
Yeah, once a week. And then at some point, either terminating or going down to every other week. And then a lot of times there are people, and this could be different strokes for different folks, whether it's the client or the therapist, but even once a week, or once a month for kind of like a maintenance
just check in
type
for a
of
while.
Therapy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, different strokes for different folks. And I think that can also be a collaborative decision as well, that sometimes clients are asking like, hey, I feel like it might be time for me to go to every other week. What are your thoughts? Or I've had to initiate that conversation with clients as well.
And it could go the other way too. You could be doing monthlies and it's like, we should dig in a little bit more. Could we start doing biweekly or weekly?
Sure. Or these new stressors that are popping up, right, are definitely causing you a lot of, right?
Yeah. So, but in general, weekly is a good place to start.
Yes.
If you're really in the shit, you might need to do twice in a week here. I don't know. But so it's very situational. But if we're thinking about it in our minds, in budgeting and everything else, we should plan on maybe once a week being our goal.
I think initially, absolutely.
And then this, like we said before, this doesn't have to be long-term forever. You can go less, later. You can go just, like I've gone just during phases of my life. Like if something comes up, something I'm really struggling with, I can do therapy for a while and then not. Right? And then not. And then if something creeps up again later, I can return to it. That's my theory on it. Is that
and I think that's wonderful.
Okay?
And it does sound like, right? Like think of that, guys, like that is you working with that other person to understand, right, that it might be time to, I mean, think of the comfort, right, that hopefully you might have with a therapist, that you're able to say, like, you know what, these 3 sessions where you can be looking at them right across from each other, and I'm feeling pretty good. I didn't have any weird thoughts yesterday. I'm hitting that journal every week. I'm doing my meditations before bed. I'm sleeping better. And probably your therapist is going to say, I'm feeling it if you're feeling it. Yeah, I'm seeing the same things, right? And then you're going back out into your world. So I think sometimes it's almost like demystifying this whole process, that it's going to be like, you know, and then there's somebody there with a pen and a clipboard and
like in the movies, they're always fucking writing stuff down.
Exactly.
And then you're wondering, what are they writing down?
Yeah.
What are they doing? Yeah, I don't like that either.
You don't like notes during a session?
I don't mind people taking notes.
But you don't, I think what you don't mind is not knowing what they're writing.
Well, I don't like what they're writing, and the timing of when they write it.
Oh,
okay. It's a timing thing too. Like, jot notes down, but if I'm in the middle of something deep and I say something and I might already be self-conscious about it, I don't want to see you writing that shit down right then.
Okay, so what's that saying to you?
What's that? I got issues.
So what is it that you're thinking when they start writing? What's wrong with me? Am I damaged?
Yes. Like, what are they saying? Like, what are they thinking about what I just said?
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes notes do drive me. But
so those are right. So maybe some of those self-statements that are hitting on some.
So do some therapists, because I've had therapy before. Like, I had
You're not going to let me go there, are you?
Well, where do you want to? I can go anywhere you want to go.
We were just getting into some deeper things with you.
We were getting
into some of your
own
shit. Maybe
God, Megan, this episode will be 12 hours long if we get into my shit.
Distortions. See,
no, it's true.
No, it's so true though. Like, we hear somebody sigh, somebody does something, and guys, this is therapy, right? This is day to day, and we get in our heads, and it starts to turn into a narrative and a story that we're telling ourselves as, what are they thinking about me? Am I more broken than what I thought? Is she just bored and she's doodling? I mean, think of all of the different.
No, there's a lot of scenarios that go through our head.
And then we can get really lost in our thoughts. And then that could cause us to shut down. That could cause us to become angry with our therapist. That could. So
can you guys just do notes after when I'm gone?
We can. We can. Hey, so maybe that's another thing that you say in your first session. I'm like, hey, something I've noticed about myself is notes during the session, kind of like I get in my head and see, but right there, then I am getting data from you, right? Where I know that you have stories that you tell yourself
that's
about.
Another thing.
So then I'm like, I'm going to be working on that in my own way. And then I might be trying to desensitize you
by every once in a while jotting a damn note.
And then I just jotted a note. What do you think that I may have said? And then we could start to look at the stories that you tell yourself.
There you really see, you guys know what you're doing.
See, I promise there's a motive. I promise.
Sometimes we don't understand what you guys are doing because we don't understand what you're doing. We don't have the expertise.
And I feel like sometimes I'm drawing like an arc and I'm writing disappointment underneath it. And I'm connecting dots of like things that I either might want to visit in that session or things that I might be connecting to.
Let me tell you another thing we're worried about.
We're putting things in our back pocket sometimes of like, oh, I'm not going to open that up now, but she just said the thing that really might be like the part of the bigger issue. And when we're ready, I will have this to revisit.
You know what else I'm thinking when people are writing?
What?
Well, okay. Because I say a lot on the show, but I'm a private person. I worry about who else can see those. Who's going to have access to what you're writing down? Especially now, sometimes you're writing notes, you're typing it in. Everything, all our medical records, everything are online now. And then we worry about somebody hacking and getting my life story.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I hear you. I think two things. One is, right, keeping it safe, confidential, all of that. I do understand what you're talking about too, with just like data being out there, right, electronically, you know, and obviously it's encrypted, it's safe.
And does she bring that little notebook home? And is her teenage daughter, who's friends with my teenage daughter, going to read that? I don't know. This is stuff we're going through our heads.
I get you. I also think, and you know what? A lot of the stuff in notes for me personally is very Cliff Note-y. It's very,
it'll trigger your memory, but someone else reading it won't know.
Because I know what's going on, right? I don't need to write like the previous trauma, right?
You're not writing word for word what I'm telling you.
Right. I mean, if it's divorce or
like if I was
childhood
telling a big
abuse
story
and-
about my divorce, I don't have a divorce. Let's say I'm telling a story about my divorce. You might write the word narcissist. You figured out that my partner was a narcissist. Maybe you'll write that down just to remind you to work on digging into that later.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Or
All right.
hearing
I get
things
it.
about communication or hearing things about boundary setting.
Yeah.
Usually we don't, I feel for myself, detail oriented type of stuff is very much clear and held on to in my brain when I'm working with people.
Yeah.
I think, you know, sometimes I think of the concept of mindfulness a lot when I'm working with people because a therapist has to be really mindful and engaged in order to be able to be in that moment, right? If I was off in my head worried about my groceries or a medical bill or something like that, I really wouldn't be able to attend very well to the person across from me. So a lot of that stuff, I really do feel like gets crystallized, sometimes even word for word. So a lot of times I think, what we're writing is things in a sense, like you said, narcissist or vulnerabilities or connect to
Child trauma,
early relationship,
like whatever,
with
just to trigger
mom
before the next
or-
session you remember.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because,
So,
I mean, you guys can't remember everybody's stories. You got to have notes. I get that.
Yeah.
Right?
In some therapists, you're right. Like they don't even really need to take notes and they write a little something
do it
afterwards.
after.
And the other
Yeah.
thing is a lot of time, like I do use a legal pad, but I just write initials and a date at the top.
Yeah.
of
Nobody
my
knows
sheets.
whose it is.
Yeah. So
even if they read the story, they would know which client it was and what your name was.
Yep,
Okay.
you got
All
it.
right. So we don't have to worry about all that. And then do you give homework? I like therapists who give homework sometimes.
Yeah, you like that.
Some people don't like homework. But if we don't do the work, therapy isn't going to cure us, you guys. Therapy isn't the only thing we need to be doing, is my thought. We got to be doing the work on our own also, right? Whether that's through meditation, like for me, through meditation, through starting mindfulness practice, through journaling ourselves, all of that. So sometimes I like when they just prompt me.
Yeah. It should be collaborative, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just osmosis. You're not going to, you know, I say this in group therapy a lot. It's not just going to be like, I'm going to write some great words and fancy stuff up here. And that suddenly it's going to, you know, it's going to just make you better, right? We do need to go home and practice different things. And some people enjoy journaling, some don't, right? So we might assign gratitude journaling work or remembering to use your mantra or even if it's homework.
Do you do breath work? Have you started into breath work yet? I mean, you know, because it's great for anxiety, a lot of different disorders.
We do teach. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the ones, breath work is wonderful, right? For grounding, for anxiety, for panic disorders. And I think one of the keys for breath work, right, is daily practice. And I usually tell people at least 2 to 3 times a day, if you're trying to access that stuff and it's the first time that you're going to use it, like, oh my gosh, I've never tried this. And every time I'm going to try it, I'm, 4 minutes into a panic attack. It is going to be very hard. You don't have, right? You haven't set that skill into stone.
Yeah, you got to practice them.
Absolutely. Yep. So you're going to trudge down the same path that you've normally gone down. So practicing this stuff when you are
that could be the
aware
homework.
and able. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a type
Meditation,
of homework, right? It
breath
doesn't
work.
It's not
It doesn't
always
have to be journaling.
It's not pen and paper all the time. Sometimes it's even, please just be thinking about ways that you can be more open to accepting feedback this week, right? Yeah. And I know that, that probably sounds really broad just here in this moment, but I just am trying to say that homework doesn't have to be.
No, it doesn't have to be pen to paper.
Yeah, like a 4-page document or something.
Next week I'd like to explore that more. So this week, why don't you start thinking about it so we can really dig into that next week.
Yeah.
Right. That's homework. Just thinking about something.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of therapy, right? Like I always talk about therapy too, like, and having had my own, it's like when I leave a session and I'm like, just, it's almost like someone will say like, how was your therapy session or what did you talk about? And it's so hard to describe, I feel like, to parrot back like what you went through because it really does. I think it gets right. It's in other areas of the brain that you're connecting to that it is hard to connect words to, right? But I like to think of like looking up at the sky and finding constellations or shapes or almost the way that you would try and find different cloud shapes in the sky. It's like connecting things and finding like the patterns and the threads.
You
that
have
make
those
that
aha moments where you go, oh shit, I didn't even think that's where that came from.
The epiphanies, man.
Yeah.
And as a therapist, I will say that one of my, probably the biggest, even high that I can get in life.
That's the high you get in that profession.
Oh,
that's why you're doing it.
It's it's amazing.
Yeah.
And to see somebody have a moment or to see them slowly start to get better.
So don't feel bad if you're at your therapist and something hits you and you're all of a sudden crying. Like that therapist is loving it. You guys, they're not judging you. They're like, this is why I do this.
Absolutely.
This is why I do this.
100%.
Because
it's magical.
All right. Let me ask you this.
And I think that, wow, there are times that I'm like, man, I wish I could bottle this stuff up and take it home and show it to. And I'm not talking about the deep personal stuff of other people. I'm just talking about
those moments
breakthroughs that not everybody gets to see.
Yeah.
And it is, it's an experience that is, and I'm not saying you can't get that in other areas, right? Like watching somebody accomplish something big or running a marathon or training or knowing them, all of those things, right, are like huge dopamine boosters. Yay.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about the area that I'm able to get them in. And I feel fortunate and grateful. And I tell clients that too, like I feel lucky and privileged to be able to do this on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So thank you guys. You know, sometimes that's even, and like I said, I do a lot of group therapy. So that's kind of what I'm talking about right now.
Yeah, those breakthroughs. Yeah. Because in general, okay, here's something people say, which is a little bit silly, but they'll say like, I'm not going to go to that therapist. She's got enough of her own. If she can't get her shit together, how's she going to help me get mine together? Okay, but here's what we have to know. I feel like people who go into therapy or any of the mental health fields are good at their job because they've been through this shit. It doesn't matter if they've resolved, none of us have resolved all our shit. We're all working on it, right? So do you feel like a lot of therapists have their own shit, don't they?
Yes.
And I'm not saying therapists need to disclose all their shit to people, but just know that like, just because your therapist has something going on, doesn't mean that they're not going to be able to help you. We help others better than we help ourselves anyway. That's my thought.
And everybody's got shit. And probably
that's why you call to that profession also, is you understand the feeling and you want to help others who've had something similar.
Most therapists, right, have definitely had some stuff to get through. And you're right. I do think that does make it a particular calling for many of them, is like maybe even having times where they felt like they weren't offered the hope or the help, or that they struggled, or that they did get help.
Which is why you feel called to that profession.
Yeah. Or that they had a wonderful therapist maybe at some point in their life. And it's like, you know what, I want to be able to do this too. But yeah, I think that just wanting to help other people and feeling like you have the ability to understand or accept and validate, I mean, those can just be basic things. And probably we won't know of all the shit that our therapists have going on.
We don't need to know everything they have going on.
But if there is that judgment, right, or that you know, or you happen to know things in the community or things like that, I mean,
sometimes it makes me feel better because I'm like, all right, they get it. They're not judging me because they got their own shit. Is that common in your head when you're doing therapy? You're not judging other people because you're just not.
No, because man, how we've gotten to these places oftentimes it's not our fault. It's not something that we've done. It's not always, I mean, a good decision, a bad decision, or that we're good or bad. I mean, we're human beings that are really just trying to get through the day as well, right? So judgment, no, I mean, that would make the counseling profession and relationship very difficult if it was led with judgment. So
that'd be one of those red flags you're moving on from that person.
Suffering and vulnerability, and not having had the ability to even maybe have some of the wherewithal to make some of the decisions that somebody who's really had a really well-adjusted, positive childhood and upbringing, right? Like, I
don't think those people, I don't think they exist much, but they're not going in these professions. Why would they? They wouldn't have an understanding of all that. I don't think they're drawn to that profession. No,
probably.
I mean, I haven't met anyone with no issues in my entire life, but maybe they're out there.
Yeah, I think
you wouldn't know because they're not coming into you guys.
No, I mean, usually people.
I think people think that they're much more normal than they are, or that everything's fine. That's not.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's denial.
there's a
survival
lot
mode.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I sometimes think that not seeking help or not being able to admit our
That's its own thing.
shortcomings or to be able to be accountable that we might need help and support from
That's
somebody.
a diagnosis right there.
Yeah, I think that can be its own issue, and it probably bleeds into other areas of people's lives.
sure.
And not trying to sound
Yeah.
right like judgy or anything like that, but I think that there's so much health
Yeah.
and wherewithal, and to be able to say like, I can't do this alone, or hey, I'd like to do this better, or hey, I'm not sure anymore.
Well, because we don't need to be in crisis mode to seek therapy. I think that's a misconception too. There are big T's and little T's, right? And you may think you don't need therapy because you don't feel like you have any big T's. I wasn't abused as a kid. I haven't been divorced, like whatever. But your T's are still, they need work. They still need work. And that they're still affecting your body, your health, mentally and physically. So don't wait till you're in crisis mode. Work on it now.
You don't have to, right? If you've ever considered it or think that there's something going on that you'd
like to talk to someone about it,
then
that's not judgmental and doesn't know you, doesn't know the other people involved. You just want to hear from someone on the outside that can
that's not involved in your life.
say.
Objectively, absolutely.
And say validation. I don't know. I feel like just getting some validation and talking something through is like, that's good enough. Sometimes you don't need to be therapists. Don't care if you don't have a big issue.
Yeah, there's no judgment.
No, like you're not walking in like, you seem like you had a really great life. What are you doing here? You're not going to hear that from a therapist.
Yeah. And if we're taking you on as a client, it's because we want to help you, and because everybody's stuff, right? Like we said earlier, pain is pain. People want to qualify their stuff a lot. I see that a lot, definitely in group therapy, right? Because people are sitting around and hearing maybe someone else's issues sound more difficult. But the thing is nobody wants anyone else's problems, right? I always say, like, if we were to all dump our problems out into the middle of the floor here, as much as we might hate ours, we would probably take ours back. We'd still take ours back over somebody else's.
Because it's familiar to us too.
But back to that concept of pain is pain, suffering is suffering. It doesn't matter who you lost or when you lost them, or that yours was divorce and not death. I mean, loss is loss. And if it's and anything that causes us pain is pain. So who am I to judge, right? What level or the depth of any of that? I just, again, how can we help make you handle this better? How can we help you do what you need to do to get through this?
And if you're too nervous to go straight to a psychiatrist or any of that, this is a great starting point. Working through it with a therapist, because you can say then, I could say to you, if you were my therapist, I could say, do you think that I should see a psychiatrist? Do you think I need more than therapy? Right. So if you're not comfortable going straight to a psychiatrist, because that can be scary.
Sure.
Therapy is a great way to just ease your way in there.
Yeah, it can go both ways. You can ask a psychiatrist
about therapy.
And absolutely.
I think if a psychiatrist isn't recommending therapy, you should find a new psychiatrist. That's my opinion, because I don't think pills solve everything. This is my personal opinion. I don't think pills solve everything. I think we got to dig in and do some work. And who are you going to do that with?
Right. And I think that I don't think pills solve everything either, for sure.
Necessary.
And I hope,
okay, I'm not saying they're not necessary.
And I don't think that most, and I have some experience working with psychiatrists, and thankfully the ones, right, that I work with, right, understand the benefits of therapy, and most do. But you're right. It's not all about throwing medicine at everything. A lot of times it's twofold. Sometimes it's just therapy, right? Not everybody needs medicine. Not everybody wants to take medicine, but
maybe you only want to take it temporarily.
Absolutely.
While you're working through, and then you want to wean off.
Yes. All of these things, right? There's so many options, guys. But yes, if I think that medication might benefit you, whether you bring it up or it's something that I want to address. And again, the client gets to lead, right? I may want to bring something up. I may want to educate somebody on the benefits and why I think it could be helpful, but it doesn't mean that that's something that you want to do.
So the bottom line is we have control over ourselves. Of our mind, or of our body. Just like we've talked in other episodes with doctors, with everything, like we're in control. We have control of our body, our mind, our spirit. So if therapy is something that feels like it resonates with us, then we should go do it and try it. And if it doesn't, then don't do it yet. You're not ready yet. And that's okay too. That's okay too. Do other things. Start your meditation. Start other journaling on your own. You don't have to have a therapist to start some of these therapeutic practices.
Sure.
You can do a little work before you get there. Of course you can. Thank you, Megan. This has been fun.
Thank you, Jenny.
I've learned
Thank
a
you so
lot.
much.
I've learned a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's nice to have an expert because I can go on and on about stuff, but I don't, like I said, I've got no letters behind my name. So
real person, human. I'm not sure about the expert. I'm not, but I like it. I like it. We're going to keep it. We'll keep it. Keep it. Feels good. Hey,
you're an expert.
I'm an expert. Seek some therapy. Live your life. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Listen, I know your time is valuable. And right now, I'm feeling super grateful and totally humbled that you chose to hang out with me today. If this podcast resonates with you, could you do me a solid and hit that subscribe or follow button? That's going to help you out because you're never going to miss an episode. And it helps me out because you're never going to miss an episode. And if you have like 30 seconds more, could you leave a 5-star rating and maybe leave a kick-ass review? Thank you so much, and I can't wait to continue our journey on the next episode. Oh, and I can't forget the fine print. You know, the legal jargon. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We're just two friends on this journey together, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or any other qualified professional. You get it. See you next time.